we should be good.
All right. I will call the Building and Site Subcommittee meeting for February 8th to order at 6:01. And I'm going to just turn it over to Jeff to review. Really, the only agenda item that we have is the change order summary report for January 2021. So take it away, Jeff.
Thanks, Scott. So can everybody see my screen, the change order summary report?
Yes.
All right, great. So we do have a few change orders to go over this month, and the intent would be, if these are all good, that these would come to the board on the 22nd of February for formal approval. So I'll just kind of run through them real quickly since we only have a few of them. And does that work out right? All right for seeing the screen? Kind of zoomed in and drawn. So most of them are pretty standard. Over at Cherokee Elementary, we're replacing the chiller over there, and the pump that we had there the pump only had, for the glycol fill station, was only one pump. There's actually a second chiller that we're not replacing, a smaller one. So really we just need a two pump on there. Minor cost difference for that. We got a credit back for the one pump because we hadn't taken delivery of it yet. Over at Huron Elementary, we're gonna improve their entrance a little bit, similar to what we're doing at Miami, kind of similar. And the only request is they did want to put main entry over the door. We're not going to put that canopy over at Huron like what Miami has, but we did want to put something on there to definitely tell them that this was the main set of entry doors. So we're going to add a few letters on that. In addition, we're going to have some illuminated letters on the side that say Huron Elementary. But if you can visualize Huron Elementary, there's the main doors, and then there's a set of doors that go into a classroom. So they just felt it might be a little misleading when we put those letters over there if we don't say which one of those two sets of doors is actually the entry door. At Mohawk Elementary School, the bid documents called for adding an accessible swing, something for the special needs. Unfortunately, the existing framework couldn't receive that. We looked at both sets of swings over there. One, the frame was too small. The other one, the frame was too tall. So in order to put on the accessible swing, we need to replace the frame over there. And in doing so, we also have to make the wood mulch area slightly bigger. So that's the $7,000 to be able to replace that set of swings.
Jeff?
Yes.
On that one, so when we did we do a bid on that originally?
Yeah,
but we didn't know at the time we did the bid that we needed a larger frame?
Correct. Yeah, the bid originally required taking off an existing typical swing, typical seat swing, and putting on a special needs swing. And when the installer went out there to do that, he noticed that the frame size was slightly too small from what their code requires them to do it. Chances are it would have been totally safe for all these years and never would have been an issue, but they've got a certain set of standards that they live by now, and we're no longer grandfathered in to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
And then we went out to the back main part playground just to see if we can put it back there for some reason. And those swings, because they're for the bigger kids, are much higher, so it doesn't allow them to put it on that set of swings either.
So this is something that we will be aware of, like in the future, if we're trying to add those types of, swings to our current. I mean, the original bid might go out to replace the frame. How much was the bid for this? Well, there was $1 million of the playground equipment. Oh, okay.
That summer.
I got it.
So I mean, and out of everything we did, we did talk at Cheyenne. We had, the swing set was really worn out. We replaced it. So out of all 12 elementary schools in the preschool building, this is the only one we had this situation pop up. So
okay, thank you.
I don't want to say it's a hidden condition because obviously you can go out there and measure it, but to the visual eye, you might not have realized that it was a smaller diameter pipe when it was originally looked at.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
No problem. So the water bottle fill stations, these are actually in transit to us right now. But what we did is after we looked at these, we found a couple spots when we walked with the contractor where I think the PTOs or somebody had put in some water bottle fill stations already. So we were able to make some adjustments in the fly and not have to put another one in there. And then also in some cases, there was 2 drinking stations instead of 1. So we're able to get rid of that double drinking station because a single unit drinking station would have worked in the case. So there's 54 that we're doing across the district. We just had a couple credits for a couple little minor tweaks to what's being done out there. But those will start probably next week, installing those across the district. They'll take a while, but we'll get them installed as fast as we can on second shift. Algonquin Middle School, this summer we're replacing all the lockers in the corridors. So that was part of the bid that was awarded previously. But the locks on there are those standard locks, like I would envision being into a gymnasium locker room where you bring your combination lock with you. The school really wants the built-in combo locks, so they don't have to mess with the kids bringing in their own locks. So the bid documents clearly show that they weren't in there, so the contractor was due an upcharge for building in those built-in locks. So we'll be doing that. Then the next three of them all kind of go together. So at both Erie Elementary and at the maintenance building, we're doing some additional doors and some door replacements. The bid documents had us putting in FRP doors. Those are a little bit stronger doors. This was the one bid category that we were over budget on when we took the bids for this summer's work. So we spent some time working with the contractor. We identified right away where why we went over budget on it. We hadn't anticipated doing this. We worked with Ken Howard, the maintenance department, on what he felt he was comfortable with. And those doors of the maintenance building have been there for over 20 years as they were. He saw no reason to need to upgrade those doors in the maintenance building. He would rather have the money back into his budget to replace a piece of mechanical equipment down the road. He felt that would be more advantageous for the district. And the doors at Erie Elementary are actually a pair of interior doors. They're adjacent to a pair of FRP doors. That's why the bid documents had them FRP. But since they're interior doors, we can definitely look to save the $40,000 and put in just a standard set of hollow metal doors inside the building. So cost savings that really won't affect the district in the long term.
I'm sorry, Jeff, this is for classrooms then?
So at Erie Elementary, it's the two corridors that go out of the back of the building. There's two major corridors that go out to the playgrounds at Erie Elementary.
All right.
Currently the set of doors that are there inside don't actually meet fire code. So our intent was to fix that up by taking that set of doors out and putting a new set of doors in the appropriate location to meet fire code. But there was really no reason to spend $40,000 to solve that fire code issue when we could do it for about half that price.
Okay, so forgive my ignorance on this, but in terms of shooters, how are these doors, where are they in terms of protecting students and or staff, you know what I mean, as they come in a corridor? And do we have to worry, I mean, is it something that a bullet could go through?
These would be the same type of doors that you would have that we've installed everywhere else. You know, they're hollow metal, so they're fairly strong.
Okay.
You know, they're not going to get knocked over, and the glass would be impact resistant glass. So it's, you know, your bullet can go through it still, just like all the rest of the glass, but a shooter isn't getting through that set of doors.
Oh, okay.
What this really is currently there are two sets of doors, one of them at the outside of the building, and one of them is almost at that media center. So it's about 30 to 40 feet in between there, creates a gigantic vestibule, which really doesn't do a whole lot for you. What we're doing is taking that interior set of doors and moving it within 8 feet of that front set of doors. So it does create more of a barrier there. It actually protects the kids a little better because now those kids that were in that long corridor that used to use their lockers in there,
right,
will now have that second set of doors before if somebody was trying to get in from the inside of it. So it is a better situation all over.
All right, thanks.
Fire egress and for people trying to break into the building.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
all right, thank you.
Yeah. And we included a memo that kind of explains a little bit of that, just as backup because it was a big dollar value, but the net of it is a credit to the district. At Huron and Sequoia Elementary, we're replacing some doors as part of the access control upgrades, the card swipe locations. We've got a couple doors that just are in bad shape and we just cannot get the card swipe to work on those. The bid documents called for FRP doors in those locations also, but they would have had to be a custom color to match the building and it would have been a substantial upcharge. The existing doors there are also hollow metal right now, so we saw no reason to go with a FRP. We thought staying with the hollow metal, since that's what they were before, would be just fine. So either it was going to be an add to the district or a credit to the district. We went on the side of a credit to the district to match what was existing there. And these aren't primary doors. These are, one is a back gymnasium door and one is a secondary egress off a corridor. And then the last thing is, at Huron Elementary, I kind of mentioned, I should have moved this up in the agenda. At Huron Elementary, we're going to add some lighted sign, a bunch of lighted letters on the building. And we actually had it somewhat double covered. We intended for the electrical contractor to do it, and our general trades contractor picked it up by mistake, but we would rather leave it with him to have him furnish and install those, and the electrical contractor just has to hook it up. So in this case here, we get the credit back from Great Lakes to provide those letters, and he will keep in his contract to just hook those up and power them up. Just makes it a little bit cleaner install than not have multiple people setting letters in the building and drilling holes in that metal panel. So that's it. The net of it is a credit to the district. And just to recap, because I know we got a couple new folks in the line here. So the overall bond issue, construction contingency budget was a little over $3 million. Prior to this, we had spent about 100 grand of that. This actually is going to be a credit back to us. So in net, we've only scratched the surface at about $50,000 of this overall contingency budget, and we're almost halfway into the bond. So we're doing very well. We don't want to, my mom used to say, don't let it burn a hole in your pocket. We definitely want to hold this as long as we can for those mechanical equipment breakdowns down the road. But just to let you know, we still have maintained the majority of our contingency that we set aside in this bond program. So we'll continue to hold that and as tight as we can and as long as we can. So unless there's any other questions, this would come to the board on the 22nd for formal approval.
Okay. Hey, Jolene, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I know this is a huge learning curve. Is there anything like that you have questions about, or I know not specifics, but overall?
No, everything that was said makes sense.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure. All right. Thanks, guys. Hey,
this will be this. Oh, go ahead, Denise.
When I was been thinking about, because you know how people are critical of change orders and it's always controversial, even though they really shouldn't be controversial. Should we, you just want us to like ask the questions again at the board meeting? Are you going to be there to or via, however, virtual to answer questions? That would be the best way to handle it rather than just, and we do put these on our site, right? And all the explanations and attachments that we see are there, correct?
Yes, as part of the motion, Denise.
Okay.
Yeah, our past practice has always been if it's a change order, it's over $10,000, that we would include a backup memo.
Right.
It didn't make sense to include something for a smaller one. So anytime you'll see a large change order, we'll have the memo there.
Right.
And yeah, I don't mind it if you toss me a softball question that you've asked at building a site.
Yes.
Because I've had a chance to reiterate it in my head and know it's coming out there. And I know it's there for the benefit of the other board members besides the
that's
public.
why I brought it up, because I just feel that there's always criticism of certain things, in our community. I know Grace isn't around, so maybe it won't be quite, but just the whole temperature of things in our community, and every community right now, is not spectacular. So anyway, I probably will ask some questions. I just wanted to give you a heads up, okay?
No, I always appreciate it. I love vetting it out here at the building and site level.
Yeah.
And Jolene, just so you know, this will be our normal cadence. Is that we'll come to the first board meeting of a month with it for building and site. And then at the second board meeting of the month, we'll come to the full board. And we try to do that also for all board motions, all contracts. It doesn't always work that way because things become emergencies, but typically that's our cadence, is that it goes to building and site. And then 2 weeks from there, it goes to the board meeting. And it seems to work well to vet out anything that we may have overlooked or questions we haven't thought of to answer.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Scott.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good night. And we will, if we don't see you, have a great midwinter break, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Hopefully some people are at least enjoying that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, thanks, Jeff.
See everyone in 15 minutes.
Immediately to preserve the dignity, integrity, and recovery.
Hello, everybody. Can you guys hear? All
We
right.
can, George.
Hi, George.
Hey, George.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Okay. Hey, Beth, maybe we can just do a quick roll call, see who, make sure everybody's on with us, and we can get started.
Okay, sounds good. Dr. Andriashko,
Here.
Ms. Aquino. Ms. Aquino? Mr. Bednard,
Yes.
Ms. Demik-Zek,
I am here.
okay, and that was Ms. Aquino.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, Ms. Demik-Zek, Mr. Soba,
I'm here.
Mr. Vojtovich,
Here.
and I'm here. Ms. Demik-Zek,
I'm not seeing her in the participant list. And there, she's in the lobby. Let me let her in.
Okay, she just,
I just let her in.
she's trying to get in, yeah.
Okay.
Let's give her a second
All right, I'm here now.
here. Okay, thanks, Jill.
excellent. Joe.
Hello.
Everybody here, so open up the Chippewa Valley Schools Board of Education meeting for February 8th, 2021 at 6:31. We'll waive the pledge this evening. Move on to item B, additions and deletions. We have none. Item C, recognition presentations. Mr. Roberts?
We have none, but I'd just like to make a few comments under that
No.
section of the board meeting. First, I would like to recognize the fact that I think we had our first graduate of Chippewa Valley Schools receive a Super Bowl ring last night, which now, how's that for something that doesn't happen every day to a school district? That's really exciting. That's Sean Murphy Bunting. And I think what is so remarkable about that is out of high school, he was not really recruited to any big schools. And he kind of had to wiggle his way into the Central Michigan University program and did quite well and was drafted in the beginning of the second round. I think it would have been 2 years ago. This is his second year in the league. So I just want to congratulate Sean Murphy Bunting on something that is quite remarkable. I also, if we could just at the beginning of this meeting, I would like to just start it with like maybe 30 seconds of silence. This past week, we lost Pat Pearson, who is a 20-year employee of our school district. And she passed away. And she ended her time with Chippewa Valley as a guidance clerk at the 9th grade center at Chippewa Valley High School. So I just want to take 30 seconds to recognize Pat. If we could just have that moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you. And I would just like to say that Pat was a valued employee. I'm not sure all who knew Pat, but she took her job very seriously, and Pat was known for how hard she worked for our school district. She would involve herself in projects to help other people, and this school district meant a lot to her, and she certainly will be missed. So my condolences to her family. And that's it from that part, Frank. Thank you.
Can I just make, well, I'll make it during, by the board members, never mind.
Okay. Moving on to item D, general consent agenda. Can we have a motion for the general consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Aquino.
Support, Jill.
Support by Mr. Mixek. Any items on the general consent agenda that anybody wishes to discuss further and have removed? Make comments on. Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please, Ms. Pyden?
Sure. Ms. Aquino?
Yes.
Ms. Demink-Zek?
Yes.
Dr. Andriashko?
Yes.
Mr. Bednard?
Yes.
Mr. Soba?
Yes.
Mr. Vojtovich?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Ayes all, motion carries.
Okay, we have a retirement resolution this evening. One of our employees who's elected to retire, Ms. Pyden.
Whereas John Stanson has served the Chippewa Valley School District faithfully and diligently for a period of 13 years as a custodian. Whereas John Stanson, through his leadership, has had a positive impact on the staff, students, and the community. Whereas John Stanson, a conscientious, loyal, hardworking employee, has elected to retire. And whereas John Stanson will be missed by all his school colleagues. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Chippewa Valley School District, not only on their behalf, but also that of the Superintendent of Schools and the administration, extend their thanks and appreciation for a job well done, as well as best wishes for the future. Be it further resolved that this resolution, having been adopted by the Board of Education of the Chippewa Valley School District on the 8th day of February 2021, be made a permanent part of the records of this school district and a copy sent to John Stanson as an expression of our appreciation. We certainly thank him for his years of service, especially since March of last year, since we know his job really probably amped up at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Wish him the best of luck in his retirement. Okay, moving on to E, from the community. Okay. We do have 5 listed speakers this evening. As customary, before we start, I just want to read in the public participation guidelines here for the folks that are going to speak with us tonight. Just a couple things here. First of all, each statement made by a participant should be limited to 5-minute duration. And as always, I'll give you like a 1-minute warning. Participants shall direct all comments to the board and not to staff or other participants. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. Complaints against identifiable school personnel may not be expressed in an open meeting. Such complaints should first be submitted in writing to the board and aimed and aired in open or closed session according to the wish of the persons involved. Excuse me. As presiding officer, may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. You may request any individual to leave the meeting when the person does not observe reasonable decorum. May call for a recess or an adjournment to another time when the lack of public decorum so interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting as to warrant such action, and may waive these rules with the approval of the board when necessary for the protection of privacy or the administration of the board's business. So been very good, and as we said every week, we've had very good, very respectful comments made to the board, very constructive comments made to the board. We appreciate them. And with that, Ms. Monier-White, are we ready?
We are. Our first speaker is Sandra Herndon. If you'd like to go ahead and unmute.
Okay. Ms. Herndon? Hello, Ms. Herndon?
Good morning. I'm sorry, good evening. My name is Sandra Herndon. I'm a parent of 2 Chippewa Valley
school students. The suppression of critical commentary regarding elected officials is a quintessential form of viewpoint discrimination against which the First Amendment guards. With that being said, the CVS School Board is no exception. It is your job as an elected official to accept scrutiny at every level. The nefarious, malicious, and premeditated acts taken against me by this board because I dared to voice my opinion and scrutinize your decisions undoubtedly called into question the dignity, integrity, and reputation of the school board and shows the lack of respect for concerned parents. This board has shown how far it will go to silence anyone who defies them, to the extent which they will go to deny parents of their First Amendment rights, and how willing they are to push a false narrative. As the school members know, I am an advocate of face-to-face learning and voicing my opinion via email. I've never identified myself as a public employee, thus allowing me to speak not only as a taxpayer, but a concerned and loving parent exercising their First Amendment right. On December 11th, 2020, Liz Pyden penned and sent an email to my chief of police regarding her email.
Excuse me, Ms. Herndon, you cannot name a board member by name. Please proceed, but just refer to it as a board member. Thank you.
Okay. In her email, she identified herself as a CVS school board member and represented the school board, taking away her right as a private citizen and acting in her official capacity. She stated that I was a racist apparently because I was a police officer. After all, racist cops get fired. Obviously, when she doxed me and couldn't find any negative about me in the internet, this was her fallback response, contributing to the false narrative across the nation regarding law enforcement officers, as if officers aren't worried about enough these days. Now we can't voice our opinion even as a concerned and loving parent. She also demanded that I'm stripped of my awards that I've worked hard for and shows the dedication to the community in which I serve. She demanded that she be part of the disciplinary process and what actions would be taken against me. This is prima facie evidence that the school board and its members will stop at nothing to push their agenda and silence those who defy them. This petulant behavior of this school board member needs to be addressed by this school board. She is an employment attorney and she knew exactly the actions that she was taking and what she was doing. As an attorney and as a board member, she swore an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Accept this as my formal complaint, as there were no available forms on the CVS website. I expect a full investigation, sanctions, and this board to encourage her to step down immediately to preserve the dignity, integrity, and reputation of this board. In closing, I have cause for concern for speaking up. I hope and pray my children will not fall victim to further harassment at the hands of the teachers, the superintendents, any member of this school board, or any member of any other neighboring district.
All right, thanks, Ms. Herndon, for your comments this evening. And Ms. Meyer-White, our next
Our next speaker is Kimberly Dashiell. I apologize if I said that wrong, but if you would like to go ahead and unmute.
Hello, Ms. Dashiell. Hello, Ms. Dashiell.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Hi.
Hi, how are you this evening?
Welcome, and thanks for coming this evening. Please share your comments with the board.
Thank you. My name is Kimberly Dashiell. I just moved into this district. I also have 2 students in Chippewa Valley School System. I'd like to start out on a positive note. I just cannot even believe what a great school Sequoia is. I was blown away. I am a 50-year-old woman with children from 30 to 7. I've been to a lot of schools. I've seen a lot of schools, and that school is just phenomenal. I just wanted to say that. My concern tonight is for the safety of my student. I would like everybody to consider why mask exemptions are being allowed without any measures being taken. Measures from the ADA like a face shield or a loose scarf around the neck. I do understand I have a disabled child. My child that I'm speaking of is disabled. He's autistic. I do understand that this will come up, but there are guidelines to follow and they're not being followed. And the social distancing is not being followed. And as a matter of fact, when my student, he had a little meltdown, breakdown, you know, that happens with autism. And he was disciplined for speaking out. And that's why I'm calling you and speaking out, because I don't feel that we should risk our children for the sake of somebody's right to work. Not even my own would I risk children for the right to work, not if it meant risking them. And I don't think that that should be being done. And I would really appreciate it if someone would look into that and correct that. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing your comments with us this evening. Okay, Ms. Monier White.
Anna Nooner is our next speaker.
Ms. Nooner.
Good evening. Thanks for once again letting me speak. Elementary has now been back in school for 3 weeks as of tomorrow. At this point, I'm assuming administrators have had a chance to get any of the kinks out, even though, you know, they went back in October for that short minute. I can tell you that once again, my second grader is happy the days he's in class. He comes home a different kid. Asynchronous days don't work for elementary. Those days, our relationship suffers at home. We fight, he cries and gets frustrated. We have behavioral issues. He rushes to get his work done. He doesn't understand how to do his work. It's a nightmare. Those 2 days are a complete loss once again. So my question is, how much longer before this board makes the decision to go full face-to-face? 3 weeks in, and we have approximately 16 weeks left. That's taken out the 2 weeks of break. Every week that you guys drag your feet is another week of lost educational opportunities. Many pediatricians and health officials have said it's time for face-to-face. For months, you have all used those same health officials as how you determine to close the schools and keep them closed. Yet now the recommendations don't matter. How can a district this large lose out on the money that the state will offer by not offering face-to-face? Let me give you some facts. My local hospital that I'm a nurse at has currently, as of today, 18 COVID positive patients. It is a large hospital. Beaumont averages currently approximately 19 patients per hospital. That's per hospital in their whole health system. So what are we waiting for? What does the board require the numbers to be before they make it a go, at least at the elementary level? Because once again, the high school and upper levels are definitely a little more difficult. I can tell you I'm not the only parent tired of this game. Our children are losing in education due to your decision. They will be behind all the surrounding schools that are open. My last question to this board is, why do CVS offer school of choice for second semester? The district's excuse has always been that it's too large to offer full face-to-face. But yet, let's let more kids move into the district to make this problem worse. We can't even offer what we have, computer-wise, to what we already have, but we're going to let others come in as well. You as a district owe it to your families to give us a plan. Watch and see what's acceptable last March. You now have had a year to get things in place. Schools of choice for fall are already open around us. And frankly, we need to know what CVS plans to do so we can make the best decisions for our own children's education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Nooner, for your comments this evening. Okay, Ms. Monier White, do we have another community member?
Our final community member tonight is Shannon Goodert.
Seriously.
Is it Ms. Goddard? Hello, Ms. Goddard.
*6 if you need to unmute.
Sorry.
Looks like she
Can you hear me now?
Ms. Goddard?
Yes. Hello.
Hi, we can hear you loud and clear. Please share your comments with the board.
I just wanted to put some thoughts out there as to when the board is going to consider sending at least elementary school kids back to school full-time face-to-face. What's that? I don't know if you can hear me. So I was just looking at numbers and just wondering when you guys are, I can't hear anybody. So,
we can hear you, Ms. Scudder.
oh, okay. It looks like you're talking on my camera. So it's like, I can't hear it on my phone. Sorry. Anyways, so just looking at New Haven and L'Anse Creuse have both been full-time face-to-face for the entire year. I know L'Anse Creuse only took a small break after Halloween because of an outbreak for 2 weeks, but their percentages aren't vaguely different than what our percentages of people who have tested positive. So just looking at the numbers, I was just wondering, you know, maybe the board could strongly consider at least sending at least K through third back to full-time face-to-face. My kids are suffering. So, I mean, they're great on the days that they go to school. And like the other parents said, the asynchronous days are not so great. These kids miss being with their friends. I understand it's a pandemic, but I just would like some serious consideration and at least sending some of these grades back full-time face-to-face. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this evening, Mrs. Gutter. Okay, I believe that concludes our community comment for the evening. Ms. White?
It does. You are corrected. That's everyone who signed up.
Okay, we'll move on to item F then, old business. I don't see any this evening. Moving on to item G, new business. Award contracts for firewall, web filtering, and email security. Mr. Sutherland.
The recommended motions of the Chippewa Valley Schools Board of Education award contracts to the following companies totaling $827,159.90 for the purchase and installation of new firewall, web filtering, and email security equipment.
Okay, can we have a motion?
I'll move. It's Jill.
By Mr. Migzek.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Wojtovich. Rationale, please.
This project will consist of installation and replacement of new firewall, web filtering, and email security network equipment. The firewall is an eligible component which qualifies for the E-rate funding. The bids were reviewed and approved by the Technology Subcommittee on January 25th, 2021. The bids received are within the budget allocation identified for the 2018 bond issue program. These projects are scheduled to start in the spring 2021.
Questions or comments by the board? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, Ms. Biden, please.
Ms. Demink-Zek.
Yes.
Mr. Wojtovich.
Yes.
Dr. Andriashko.
Yes.
Ms. Aquino.
Yes.
Mr. Bednard.
Yes.
Mr. Soba.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Ayes all, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item G2. Mr. Roberts.
Yes, recommended motion that the Chippewa Valley Schools Board of Education reconfirm the extended COVID-19 learning plan for the 2020-21 school year.
Motion, please.
That was the motion. So here's the rationale. This is a requirement of Public Act 149.
Ron, I gotta get a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Mr. Quino.
I'll support Frank. It's George.
Supported by Mr. Soba. Rationale, please, Mr. Roberts.
Rationale. This is a requirement of Public Act 149. It must be done on a monthly basis.
Questions or comments by the board?
I do have a question. So I don't know, maybe it was sent. I don't know if I saw the document. If it was, I apologize that I did not see it. So I just wanted, it is continuing with our hybrid plan for until, I mean, it doesn't change anything that's in place right now, correct?
Right, this is for the month of February.
Oh, okay.
And it represents exactly what we're doing right now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments by the board?
I'd like to make a comment.
Mr. Wojtovich.
As a board and administrators, I understand that we're under a lot of stress with decisions related to this pandemic and school district. It's obvious we're not going to make everybody happy. As elected officials, though, we're a voice of our families and our students. I believe we're obligated to put aside all of our personal feelings and make decisions solely on science and evidence. We need to put our students first, regardless of what we think personally. We have been told to follow the science all along. So I have to ask why it seems like we're not doing this. The HWO or the WHO, I'm sorry, HWO or WHO, CDC, MDHHS, even our governor has said the students need to get back to school and have little risk by going back to school, if not no risk. I think it's time to start following the science and evidence instead of unconfirmed claims and stories. I appreciate that we're making steps forward, but maybe we're not moving quick enough. When we first heard of COVID-19, we immediately closed our schools and were forced to wear masks. We're told that it was for our children's safety and everything else. Now that we have a lot of evidence from the WHO and CDC, MDHHS, our country's top infectious disease doctors and everybody else, we're not moving at the same pace to fix these wrongs. We need to keep our children safe again. Again, the CDC, MDHHS, and the top doctors are saying masks could be what is making people sick, and they have a lot of data to support this. That there is no reasonable reason for kids to wear a mask. We also have an abundance of evidence to prove that these shutdowns are seriously damaging our children. As you all probably know, Las Vegas, the district in Las Vegas, has decided to reopen due to having 18 children's suicides related to the closure. And that doesn't even address the mental problems, the damage being done to our children due to their declining desire of school and their plummeting grades. In no way would I ever make light of a heart attack, but it seems to me that what we're doing is no different than going to a doctor and having them tell you that you're on the verge of having a heart attack, but then having them prescribe for you to do and eat everything that we now know causes a heart attack. I've heard conflicting opinions, but the governor has said she would like our students back by March 1st. That's only 3 weeks away. Under everyone's view, we see that all the data is quickly moving to the better. Going by our governor's recommendation, I would like to put forth that we put a plan or at least an idea in action, as our governor did, that we would get our children back by this time, even if it's only tentative.
Okay, any other comments by the board?
I'll go if I can. This is Jill. I agree with Robert that we're never going to make that we're not going to make everybody happy, and that's including going into fall. We have heard that it's impossible to reschedule people to get into the virtual academy at this point, which I can understand that. I am still confused as to why we cannot live stream on the off days and give these kids that are at home support from their teachers while they're at home. There is one of the speakers mentioned, people are looking at other school districts for the fall. And I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that that includes this house. We can't go forward. We have kids that live a half a mile from us that have been in school all year. And that does not put my kids at a competitive advantage to them. This is something that we have to address. We have to get these kids back in school. It shouldn't be a matter of if, it should just be how. I mean, they have to wear masks. That is the mandate. That's okay. So we have to follow our mandates. But how do we get these kids back in school so that they can be competitive with kids that are less than a mile away from them? Because our kids are suffering. And that is a complaint that I'm hearing. I mean, you have one of your own board members that is possibly looking at a different school district next year. And I've been in Chippewa Valley since, geez, graduated in '96, so 18 years, a long time. But I'm not the only decision maker on my kids' education in this house either. It's a conversation that my husband and I have had since last March. We can't, if we wait now, we're 2 weeks, I don't even know when our next meeting is. We're not making any kind of plan for telling these parents when they can expect our kids to be back in school full time. And they're not buying it. So I mean, I can't sit here and support just saying we're gonna remain status quo for right now. Even if it is, like Robert said, a tentative plan and we do have to pull back. But I see no plan going forward of when we can expect any grade, any level, going back full time. So that's it.
Okay, any other board members want to make comments this evening?
I just want to make one as a point of clarification, and that is, to my understanding, and perhaps I am incorrect, we have had many requests for in and out of the virtual academy, and I believe we have managed to accommodate almost every student that wanted to be switched from in remote learning in hybrid into the CVVA, and all except for, I believe, 15 high school students. That was what we were told 2 weeks ago. It has nothing to do with not having a plan. So I'm not saying that. I'm just wanted to clarify that, just so people, I'm thinking people have had some choice. So that's all I'm trying to clarify. Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Is there going to be any presentations or discussion this evening during your portion of the agenda regarding this?
Yes.
I thought so. So let's wait and hear what the administration is going to present, and then let's maybe comment at that point. This is this is for February. So it's due in, so you can vote yes or no, but that means that we would not be going back in February. I understand that. So, but I would like to hear the administration's presentation.
Okay, any further comments by the board? All right, hearing none, we will move on to that next item on the agenda, which will be H, Union Communications.
We have to vote on that, don't we?
We have to vote on that. Yeah, we have to vote on that.
Okay. Can we have a roll call vote? Ms. Pine, please.
Sure. Ms. Aquino.
Yes.
Mr. Soba.
Yes.
Dr. Andriashko.
Yes.
Mr. Bednard.
Yes.
Ms. Dominczak.
No.
Mr. Vojtovich.
No.
Myself, yes. 5 yeas, 2 nays, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to H, Union Communication. Any labor leadership here would like to address the board this evening?
We do not have any in the meeting.
Okay. All right. Moving on to item I, administration reports. Mr. Roberts.
Sure. First this evening, before I get into a report on the status of COVID in our school district and in our community, I just want to recognize John Stanson, whose retirement was approved this evening. He's been a custodian in our school district for 13 years. He finishes his career as the head custodian of Cheyenne, and as a former elementary principal, I'd like to say a head custodian is a pretty important person. And especially right now, it takes a lot of skill to run a building, keep it clean, and meet the needs of the various staff members. So I just want to congratulate John. So with that, moving on, I want to have Sarah, if you would pull up the PowerPoint, please. I just want to give you a report. It's similar to last week, but it might, I think tonight I can lay the ground for some of the comments I heard made by board members just prior to this. So Sarah, if you'd go to the first slide after this, please. So I just want to review where we were in the last meeting. These are numbers of positive cases of COVID in both Clinton and Macomb Township over the last few months. And I've added some additional data in the last, the bottom line there. So you can see from November was really a peak month, and that's the time we pulled elementary out and we had delayed secondary. During the last meeting, I was talking to you of what I saw as an estimate of the number of cases in Clinton Macomb Township. And you'll see here below the actual number of cases that did occur during those months by the end of the month. So the estimates were pretty accurate. Not that I'm necessarily good at predicting things like that. It just followed a pretty steady curve throughout the month. So that's what my predictions were based on, and that's what happened. So you can see that the January numbers are much lower than the last 2 months. And if you would even go back, and it's not in this chart, January numbers are pretty similar to what October numbers were when we voted to bring kids in for face-to-face instruction. So Sarah, if you could go forward with that, please. These were the 7-day rolling averages, and this is a Macomb County number. And again, this kind of supports the last point I made, that the numbers have returned to similar numbers of when we brought our elementary kids in. And at the time had approved bringing secondary. And so it's 94 cases on a rolling average, which is just slightly higher than October's. And you can see what happened in between times there. So that's 7-day average. So if we go forward, we're going to look at positivity rate. Again, it tells the same story. February returns to, and these were the most current numbers I could get, returns to very similar to what it was in October, and in between those two dates, October 1st and February 5th, it tells the same story. So, and Sarah, I think we've looked at that long enough. You want to move it along, please? So I want to talk a little bit about some of what's been in the media lately. We've heard a lot in the media about what CDC has said about a safe return to school. CDC has said it is safe for students to return to school. It says that we should not be counting on the staff necessarily being vaccinated against the virus. But in saying that, what they have said is that masks are necessary, social distancing is necessary, and in the CDC guidelines, they are still recommending as the best standard of 6 feet of social distance. They've made some statements that indicate it can be lower, but that goes with some caveats. And they're really what they recommend is a 6-foot distance whenever possible between students. And then, as always, the last one, good hygiene. So I think that's really important to understand, because in our hybrid plan right now, we are able to meet these recommendations, these strong recommendations. So if we go to the next slide, because the governor has also spoken on this. The governor has spoken as a March 1st request. CDC has said we can return the students to school. What we currently do meets the recommendations of these two groups. What CDC wants and what the governor wants is students to return to face-to-face instruction in some format. Their guidelines have not stated that we should return all students. And I'm not saying that shouldn't be our goal and we shouldn't be working towards that. I'm saying we're just where we are right now. CDC has said it's a safe return to school, but there are those recommendations on how you need to manage your school from CDC. And the same with what the governor has told us, that she would like our students in school. But the intent of what they're saying is they're really looking at this from kids having no in-person instruction to desiring that they have some in-person instruction, because there are school districts across our nation, very large school districts and many in between, that at this point in time still are not offering any face-to-face instruction. And I'm not judging what they're doing, because every single school district has different circumstance and different things they must deal with in order to provide the best possible education they have. And they can. That's no different across our country than it is right in our own county. So that's kind of where we are right now. Now, going forward, Sarah, if you could go forward on that, please. Our goal is definitely to return to face-to-face instruction. What we're doing right now is collecting data on what's occurring K-12 in our school district, currently operating as a hybrid program. So it's not only collecting data on how it impacts our school and its operations, but it's also about our protocols and what's working. And that's part of when we collect data, we look at our protocols and say, are they working? So we have been to school for nearly 3 weeks with elementary and starting our 3rd week with secondary. So here are some numbers. So if we could go forward here, please. Since January 20th in K-5, we've had 6 positive cases of COVID within our school. That's between students and staff. That's resulted in 14 students being quarantined. But we also deal with outside of school. We have 4 staff and 32 quarantines right now. And the reason those people are quarantined is because something in their personal lives. So when you take a staff member, you think they may have a spouse who's positive. They may have a relative that lives in the house who's positive and they've been exposed to that person. So they're quarantined, and most likely they're teaching back into the classroom using our technology. That's the same thing with our students right now in elementary that are quarantined. Something has happened in their family that requires them to be quarantined. So that's elementary. I think that's a pretty good picture right now. That's a good picture. If we go forward to secondary. So secondary is 6 positive cases, and this is actually through today, and that's a combination of staff and students. And as a result of that, we have 55 quarantined, okay? And then outside school, we just have 1 quarantine. So when we look at this, what we think about is quarantines are pretty important. And we've quarantined this number of students, both elementary and secondary, and that's really based on 6 feet of social distance. So we think about, well, what's going to happen if we reduce that distance, and what would quarantines look like? And that's really key in what we do. And I've said this before in meetings, because Chippewa Valley Schools is built for efficiency. We run pretty maxed size classes, and that really in some ways is a benefit to us, because we run our schools this way and we really maximize efficiency. We offer many programs that other school districts cannot offer. So I will say this, not as an excuse, but as a matter of fact. A small district in a pandemic, I've come to learn, has an advantage. It has an advantage because of flexibility. We have less flexibility because of the size of our operation, because of the number of students we put on the school buses every single day. And when we put 60, 70, 80 kids on a school bus, we are built for efficiency. When we run our classes in our high school, We are running classes in the high school in many of our core areas at anywhere from 33 to 35 students. And that's efficient. But that efficiency allows us to offer a number of programs that cannot be offered in many school districts. So in the middle of a pandemic, it creates somewhat of an issue because of the sheer numbers we're dealing with. And I say that when you look at Dakota High School, I think people need to keep in mind Dakota High School is the largest high school in the state of Michigan. And Chippewa Valley is not far behind. I would venture to guess that Seneca Middle School is probably one of the largest middle schools in the high school. So we are moving mass quantities of kids around. So that doesn't mean we can't open face-to-face. That means we need to be very careful about the decisions we make to do it. And that's what we're considering right now as we move forward. Anything we do to add students back into in-school time, we reduce our ability to social distance kids. Our teachers teach both in the virtual academy and in regular instruction. So we have limited opportunities to really change our schedule. And that was a commitment on our part to provide a quality remote or virtual experience to our students. We chose to use our teaching staff. So these are all the factors that we have to consider as we move forward. So what this really brings us to is a couple of thoughts. And I want to end with this. We are really following CDC guidelines. Even last night or this morning when I heard the president speak about returning students to school, and that is one of his top priorities. One of the things he mentioned was we need smaller class sizes in order to do that. We can't do that. We cannot lower our class sizes to do that. So we have to think of how else we might do that. So new CDC guidelines are expected this week. They thought they would be out by Wednesday. So those are very important to us to wait to see what these guidelines are in order to develop a plan going forward. We certainly want a plan going forward, but we just want to make sure that as we move forward, we can sustain it. We think that's really good for our community to not make the move and then say, now, wait a minute, this doesn't work. So that really is on us to do that. And we look forward to these guidelines and coming back with some suggestions on how we can achieve some of the things that have been mentioned this evening. So that's the end of my presentation. And if any board members have questions about what I presented, I'll certainly entertain them.
Questions, comments by the board?
I'll go. It's Jill. So you had started it with thinking that was going to answer some questions, and that didn't answer any questions for me. Are you seeing that in the high school, the secondary level, that there's more than that there's social distance at 6 feet?
In many instances, I would not say in all instances because it's not achievable, but we've in any situation maximized what we can do. I cannot guarantee it at every spot. And part of that goes with creating A and B cohorts. And there's a little bit of an imbalance in those just by the nature of doing that. So there's not 6 feet everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of speechless. I see no, you're saying these are coming out Wednesday, or they expect them to be out Wednesday.
Yes.
So I'm seeing no plan. When people ask me, what is the plan? I have no idea. I have no idea what we're doing. I know my kids, 2 out of 3, go to school 2 days a week. And that is, and that's where I'm at. And I don't know how to answer people that ask me, what am I supposed to do next year? I I don't even know. I like I said, I'm speechless. I don't even know what to ask because I see nothing. And I know that's not true. I know there's stuff behind the scenes, but we don't know it. And that's frustrating.
Does your frustration stem from a lack of a concrete date?
Concrete what? I'm sorry.
Does your lack of frustration, or does your frustration stem from a lack of a concrete date that we say we are returning?
No, it's not necessarily a date, but if we're looking at it, we have nothing this meeting. Our next meeting's at the end of February, which is you're gonna want 2 weeks to prepare for it, for them to come back, anybody to come back full time. You're not gonna have everybody start on one day. We're at the end of March already, maybe January, February, March. So we have what, April, May? And the kids are checked out by June. If they're not, most of them are checked out now. There's no, I mean, I guess it's just watching these kids. They're just floundering around. And I don't know, and it seems like education is the only place this is really happening. And maybe it is because it's divided up and it's by different districts, and different districts can make their own decisions. But I mean, I hate to use the word fair and not fair because life's not fair. I understand that, but these are our kids and this isn't fair to them.
Can I ask a question? So, no, I understand your frustration, Jill. I mean, I understand that parents are suffering, kids are suffering, but I guess my questions are these. So do you think that as a school district, we should put kids in full-time face-to-face if we aren't able to social distance the 6 feet with half of our kids in class? So if we go full-time face-to-face, how are we going to meet the CDC guidelines for social distancing is my first concern. And I'm very concerned about lunches. So I don't know, I guess, Ron, maybe what might help is that from my perspective, and maybe the rest of the boards, I don't know, is that I know that you and your staff are looking at other, possibilities of how we could make some things work. So while you're looking at them, are you looking at different schedules, perhaps eliminating lunches? I mean, I know that those are all things that we're looking at, but I understand I'd like the kids to go face to face, but I don't know how we could do it in our secondary schools, given the fact that we're struggling to do it with hybrid. And that's my concern. I get your frustration, Jill, and I understand what you're saying, but my concern is how we would possibly be able to do that and provide the guidelines, safety guidelines that are required, for our students and staff.
Are you asking that question to me? What my thought is on it?
No, I'm just kind of, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, what is,
okay.
I don't know.
Well, I guess my thought is, if we're not doing it already, then what's the big deal of having another kid in there? Our numbers, it's not like we're having huge amounts of positive cases. And I remember sitting at Jackson's IEP last year. It was like in March. It was like right after the shutdown. And I was thinking, oh, no big deal. Next year, we'll get it all together. We can be face to face. And so I didn't think last year at this time that this year was going to be this bad at this time. If we can't get our act together now, what are we going to do in the fall? We will never be able to meet 6 feet. Yeah, we're a big district. So we either change classes around. Maybe these programs we're offering that we wouldn't be able to offer, we don't have those. So we can split the kids up.
Yeah, for fall, that may be necessary. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I'm just wondering, for right this minute.
Right this minute, it's been for a few months.
Right now, the kids are at 3 feet apart for the most part, from what I understand. So if you double the size of the kids, they are going to be in many classrooms. They're going to be a foot away from each other. That, I guess if people are willing to roll the dice and say, okay, so if our cases go up, I mean, I personally am not, but I am very interested in other solutions, perhaps changing of schedules. I think there are some things, that you said for the second, for next year, maybe we won't be able to offer, because I do think we need to get all of our kids in school is 5 days a week or whatever we can do. But personally, I'm not ready to put 35 kids in a classroom at the secondary level, change classes and have lunch. That would be, I think that would be asking for problems. I know that other schools are doing it, such as L'Anse Creuse, which everybody keeps holding us up to L'Anse Creuse, and I understand that. The difference is L'Anse Creuse has 70% of their kids in school, and they have their entire staff to serve those 70 kids because they're using an outside virtual academy. We didn't do that because we wanted our kids to be taught by our teachers at the beginning. So because we made those decisions early on, we are now not in a situation from a staffing perspective to even support all the kids with the virtual. I'm not saying that won't be true for fall, but I don't think we're in a position to do that right now. So I do get it, but if we had all of our staff focused just on our students, that are going to come in person, I think it might be more doable, but we still wouldn't have the room. But I really want the kids back in school. But I'm not ready to throw 35 kids into a classroom but I would support changing schedules and eliminating lunches or changing the hours of the day or something to that effect. So,
well, I guess that's what I'm curious, Denise. You stopped talking when you said when you would be ready for it. When would you be ready for it?
I'm not sure. I think for me, I wouldn't want lunches. I don't think. That's just me talking right now. Mm-hmm. And I guess elementary, I would probably feel comfortable sending back, sooner than the secondary. I'm very uncomfortable with. That's how I feel right now.
Okay.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Is that Mr. Wojtowicz?
Yeah, Mr. Wojtowicz. I have a question. Okay, everything we're talking about here is assuming the CDC guidelines and WHO and all that is correct, which they have been proven to change their views on things drastically in the past. Okay, so let's just say they're right. We're talking about distancing. Now, I'm not sure. It's not what the opinion is put forth. It's this evidence that supports it. Now let's go with social distancing. Okay, social distancing, we're saying 6 feet, 3 feet, the whole thing, it's dangerous. Okay, I guess I have to question, why is it dangerous? It's been proven that a sneeze can travel not 6 feet, not 3 feet, but can travel well over 20 feet. So if we're gonna distance 6 feet, how can that even help anything with a sneeze, okay? Sneezes don't seem to be the thing that caused this, okay? They're saying getting close to somebody, you can catch it. Okay, well, catching it. Now, how is that a problem when it's not the catching of it, it's the hospitalization or being, or deaths, okay, which have plummeted, okay? Every year, now, first of all, I have a serious question. Why all of a sudden this year, our yearly influenza numbers have disappeared, okay? We have COVID, we no longer have the flu. So let's just go back many previous years on an average, and we have to look at that. And once you take the actual numbers, the posted numbers, the yearly influenza is much higher. So it's much worse. It's much more dangerous, however you want to word it. So why are we so worried about damaging our children with the COVID-19 when we aren't worried every year. So unless we're willing to close our schools down due to the yearly influenza, which has been proven to be far more dangerous, then why are we closing our schools down right now? Why are they not back face to face?
Are you talking to me? Like you want me to respond to that?
Well, you or anybody can give me an answer on that. I mean, where is the lack of safety here? I don't know. I don't see it. I know a lot of people are making claims, but they don't have anything to back it up. They're not telling me anything to back it up.
What do you mean in terms of mask use, in terms of
the social distancing? Okay, 6 feet. Let's just go with that one. Okay, if you stay 6 feet, is that going to get rid of this? Because I have to say, I don't know what world that would be in, because we've tried that. There's plenty of data showing that distancing doesn't make a difference. In fact, there's areas that haven't distanced and haven't had these strict rules, and their numbers are far lower than ours. So unless we can figure that out, we have to go with the best. We have to go with, let's figure this out, get our kids back to school, because I don't see what everybody's claiming. There is nothing to support it. So I'd like to hear your opinion, Denise, but I'd like to hear everybody's opinion on that. I mean, I hear a lot of claims. Oh, we can't keep them social distance. We can't do this. Okay, well, why is that a bad thing? I mean, because it makes them sick. Well, okay, but where's the data to prove that? This is what we have to do. We have to put our personal feelings aside. And in my opinion, we have to go by the facts, the evidence, all the data without altering it. And if somebody can give me the proper data to prove this, I'm willing to listen. But all I've seen is data that doesn't support it.
I'd just like to say, Bob, Ron, are your personal feelings and your decisions to recommend to this district to stay in remote or go to hybrid, is that something that you personally come up with, or is that based on your conversations with other superintendents, with our school nurses, the Macomb County Health Department? This is not a personal recommendation from you from this board, right?
No, first of all, I am a board member, which I'm a voice of the people. I have to put all my personal, I don't care what I think personally. Now, the way I come across, or the way I have formed my opinion is by looking at the numbers, by looking at the data, by looking at the evidence, by looking at the country's top experts in the field, by looking at the science. This is what I've looked at, and I don't see what we're talking about here. I don't see why we shut down.
Mr. Wojtovich, I just want to say that I'd be happy to, if you send me all your data, I would certainly be happy to look at it. But based on what I've seen, maybe you don't believe what's on TV, I don't know. But based on what I've seen from Dr. Fauci, for instance, who I think seems to be very reputable by most people, is that schools should have as much, especially mask wearing and social distancing, as possible. Yeah, maybe it will spread, and I guess that's not, I just would like to know what science you're looking at versus what science you think is wrong that is being looked at by our district. So if you can provide those sources and some information, I'd be happy to look at it.
Well, let's go with Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci in the beginning has already said there's no reason to wear a mask. Now he's saying a little different, then he changed his opinion. He has said just recently that our kids need to get back to school. So if we're going to listen to him, let's send our kids back to school. He said, let's put our kids back in school.
He said that if there's protocols for safety. Yes, that is true. Okay.
So let's get
the protocol. You're not agreeing with the protocols for safety. You're saying your sources and your science that you're reviewing does not support those protocols. So give me those protocols. Give me your sources. I'll be happy to look at them. I want the kids back in school. but I also don't want to end up being a super spreader district. And I know it's not dangerous for the kids. It's not as dangerous to other people, but there are new strains that have come out that are way more contagious. And I don't want to keep our schools shut down, but I sure as heck don't want it. You know, I mean, they have proved, how come the Super Bowl had only whatever percentage of people? Why does every other big event not have people next to each other, shoulder to shoulder?
For the same reason.
Not being done anywhere. Pardon?
For the same reason we've closed our schools down. But you have all the data. It's called the CDC, the WHO. It's called the MDHHS. It's called all these things. Okay, you're Dr. Fauci. If you look at the numbers there alone, that's what I'm going by. That's part of what I'm going by. And then you look at the truth. I mean, this is where it's all at. There's nothing secret here. It's all out in the open. And I'm not seeing anything that is a big fear.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Roberts, in your presentation, you talked that you were going to be collecting data. When would you be able to present that to us at the next board meeting?
Yeah, I'll have more data at the next board meeting. I also hear, well, I'll let you finish. Yes, we'll have more data by the next board meeting, and I'd like to make a comment about some of the other conversation I'm hearing, but I'll wait until you've asked your questions.
Okay. The other question I had was maybe Dr. Blanchard could talk a little bit about staffing and related to the pandemic and how that's going since we've been doing hybrid. Has anything changed? Is it the same?
So from a teacher perspective, we are fully staffed. We have all of our teachers are in place. From a substitute teacher perspective, we are fine there. Our fill rates have been fine, which going into the pandemic, I'll be honest with you, that was my large area of concern. Where we continue to grow in our staffing areas or lack of staffing is in custodians. We had another retirement tonight. We had a resignation late last week. And so those custodial positions, we do have several vacancies there, and then we have some staff members from that group on leave as well. The balance to that again is our elementary buildings aren't running a lot of the programs, a lot of the community programs, so our evening activities are down considerably, which allows them to focus on the classroom cleaning, but it's not without strain. Our lunchrooms, we have vacancies in lunchroom monitors. Our teachers are picking up and covering those, but again, it's not the same. It's not the same duty as you would if that was your full-time job. Again, our teachers are covering that during their lunch period, in which they now need to get back to their classroom when the bell rings. The tables need to be wiped down. Takes 5 minutes for the spray to sit as a dwell time on there, so they can't assist and clean because they need to get back to the classroom before their students arrive. So that's presenting a little bit of an issue. Our building administrators will end up they're in there anyway, but they're ending up cleaning and wiping tables down to make sure those areas are clean. We've repurposed hall monitors at times to cover lunchroom and make sure tables are clean. It's definitely a strain on staff. We haven't had to close the building down because not enough staff, but it's definitely going to be a strain on staff as we continue. Staff will be offered to work extra hours, example custodians, and they'll do so. But at some point you have employee burnout, and that's not uncommon in the hospital settings. That's what you saw in the height of the pandemic when they were working extra shifts. You did see employee burnout. So we're very aware of that. We are, as soon as an applicant applies for one of our jobs, we are pushing that forward. We're interviewing. We're trying to interview. We're having trouble having people apply. We don't have the candidate pool. We're not exclusive in this. This is an issue in schools in the Tri-County area, but we're not getting people to actually physically apply for positions. We have many areas we post jobs, in many different forums and different platforms, but
with the unemployment situation and extra unemployment money that comes, it works out to be just under $15 an hour if you're working full time, being unemployed. A lot of our entry level positions do not pay $15 an hour. So again, people, and they have options. We live on Hall Road. They have options of where they would like to work, where they may, want to work somewhere else. So we are able to cover everything. We're covering it. It's tight. Food services, it's tight, but we are able to cover, and we haven't had to shut anything down because of lack of coverage. I've talked to Mr. Sutherland, in fact, today about food service, and one of our areas of concerns is food service. If we return to 100%, we return to 100%, the amount of food then is increased, and how are we distributing that food within the lunchrooms will present an issue, and so we'll have to think that through and work through that of what that lunch now looks like. Do we do a different type of lunch versus what we have traditionally done? So those are the conversations that we are having from HR to the business end of things. I don't know, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Blanchard.
Okay, any other comments or questions by the board? Mr. Roberts, do you have something you want to wrap up with here, or have curriculum?
Yeah, I want to make a few comments. First, I've agreed with so many things that have been said, and I've agreed with so many things that have actually sounded like they might have been in conflict with each other. Information regarding what we're dealing with has changed over time. If you had an opportunity to read what Mitch Albom wrote yesterday, he talks about this, and I think he lays it out pretty well. That's what we've all had to deal with, is just a changing landscape, changing data. I think as scientists learn about COVID, this information is shared, and it impacts how we do things. All I can do is really deal with and make recommendations on what's most recent. We've been in school back to a hybrid, which we've started our third week for high school. Since the beginning of the year, our third week. And I think the board can justify every vote they've taken because there was data at that time to indicate that's what should be done. And now when we look back, we might say, well, that data now when we look back at that data, maybe the decision could have been different. Maybe it could have been. But to me, this is a learning process of which none of us have ever been through. When we pulled our elementary kids out, we remember what that was like with what was going on with the number of cases in the month of November, and we delayed high school. I'm really encouraged by what we're seeing now. This to me is really good, and I would hope that when we see that, at this point in time, I don't sit here and think, I hope we can open fully in the fall with a face-to-face program. I hope that happens. I certainly hope that happens. I'm very hopeful that happens. With COVID, who knows? We may change our mind by then. But that certainly is what we're aiming for. We're also aiming for in-person education this year. I just think after being in school with our hybrid for as little as we have, there are just some things we need to sort out before we start making recommendations to putting kids in school full-time for more. We certainly can do that. We certainly can do that. I just hope that the way I look at it is when we do it, we say, look, here's our data. It's been good. It's safe. It's good for our staff. It's good for our kids. We know spread doesn't occur in school. We know that. I won't deny that. We found that last time. But what we're going to face is really large quarantines of kids. That's why, to me, and that'll be very disruptive to those kids. No fault of their own, to be quarantined. Because maybe someone next to them sits, or someone within, you start thinking now when you spread out this 6-foot distance around each kid, there's a lot more kids there. When you look at a bus, there's a lot more kids there. When they sit in a lunchroom, there's a whole lot more kids there. So when I look at this, I'm so encouraged by our numbers and where they're going that I'm thinking we can begin to start doing it. I'll be honest with you, I don't feel a rush to immediately do it. I certainly hope that in the month of March, we can start doing this. And we certainly have time to plan for that. So that's kind of my goal in all of this. But I'm encouraged by the numbers dropping. I think that just creates a safer situation for everyone. And I think it takes into consideration how our staff feels. And I think their thoughts are important. And if I've said this once, said it 10 times, I'll take people. I'll take people to classrooms at the high school, Chippewa Valley High School, and show you what a full class looks like. It is shoulder to shoulder. That isn't true across our entire district, but when we do this, we have to apply it across our entire district. But I'm encouraged with the numbers and where they are and where they seem to be heading. That I think that we can achieve everything that everyone wants. I just don't, I don't see it tomorrow. I don't see it next week. In a few weeks, I think we can begin to look at those things. So that's where I sit right now. If the board wants me to plan this differently, then that's what I need to know.
I, for one, appreciate your careful consideration of everything and also the rest of the administration that's on here too. Being an admin in education myself, this isn't easy. This is something no one in our lifetime has lived through, and it's very difficult decisions that have to be made in the past year. So I appreciate that you're taking your time, you're collecting your own data that we'll be able to view later, and we're not rushing into anything that unfortunately maybe somebody could possibly die from. This is life and death, and you have to take it seriously. Only get one chance at it. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Frank, I have a follow-up question for Ron, if I may. So, Ron, listening to you, you were saying for fall, you're hopeful. So what would you say to parents who have to decide now what they're doing in the fall? Because now is when all of the private schools are taking applications, and schools of choice applications have to be filled out because they are heavily advertising. So, I mean, I would like to see us commit to full-time face-to-face for the fall. I'm assuming we're having the virtual academy again in the fall, so that people would have a choice that they could make, and people would know a lot more now what that virtual academy would be like. But I'm not hearing you say that I'm hopeful for fall is scary to me. And I think it would be scary to a lot of other parents because a lot of us are done with this.
Jill, I'm hopeful for much sooner than fall.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very careful in what I say because I can't predict the future. None of us can. I certainly would hope, strongly hope, 95% hope, like a vaccine, 95%, that we'll be face-to-face in the fall. But if we know what's out there now that they say in the news with things going on with COVID, so I can't sit here not knowing what our future holds, saying, oh yes, we're going to be there. I'm hopeful for much sooner than fall. I'm hopeful for this school year. I'm hopeful for all our kids for this school year. And the way I look at the numbers going right now, I think it's achievable. I think it's achievable this year.
With our resources though, why would it not be achievable in fall? Now, taking into account there's a state shutdown or something that everybody has to do, but with our resources in our district, why would Lance Cruz be able to run it and we wouldn't? In the fall, I'm talking about.
Well, okay, because none of us know what the fall really holds. Mm-hmm. Everything being equal right now, with what we see with a pattern in numbers, yes, we should certainly. If things, just like we tried to figure out how many cases would be in the month of February based on the beginning of the month, if we take where we are now and go forward, certainly, we should be ready to go in the fall, certainly. But then I hear news of these variants are out there. And so you don't know the impact that will have on it. I'm not beginning to predict what the impact will have on it. I have no idea. That's just way above me. What I'm looking at right now are the numbers. I expect that we'll be in the fall. I expect all school districts right now are planning to be full on face-to-face in the fall. When we talk administratively, we're also talking about what are the steps we need to take to get all of our kids in this school year. That is our goal. That's what we want to do. I will say to any parent who is looking outside, I'm really hopeful that COVID is short term in the lifespan or in the span of when a child goes to school. That COVID is short term. A kid's education is long term. And I would put what we offer in Chippewa Valley schools up against any other local school district. And I think a parent who in the short term makes a decision, and I'm not judging their decisions based on the reason people need to make decisions. Sometimes people may need to make decisions based on other things. But in a purely an educational sense, if you can weather this out, it will be the best thing for your kid and your family. I also know, because of conversations with superintendents, no one has it figured out. Sometimes we're held up to other districts in the area because we're not face-to-face, full-time. But I also know there's segments of those populations that are saying, what about me? What about my kid? Because in your plan, my kid didn't get what that kid gets. That is everywhere. And that's the nature of just what we've had to face as we've made decisions across school districts. Because we're not going to make everyone happy. We know that. We cannot. Because we cannot offer enough options that are necessary to do that. So I am very hopeful that we'll have our kids back. But we've come this far. I don't want to put them in and pull them out. We've had our secondary kids in for 2 weeks of school. 2 weeks. It's a huge adjustment on our teaching staff on how they teach. It's a huge adjustment for our kids and how they learn. And based on the information that I receive, when I have weekly meetings with the health department, I just want to take measured steps. And I think we can. Put together a plan that's right for our students, right for our staff, and our parents need to hang with us because I think we're worth it. We're reacting to a pandemic, and we're reacting in a way that no one's told us what to do, because no one's wanted to own it. So we have to own it on our own. And to me, that's a huge responsibility. When I come to you with a recommendation, I make that recommendation because I believe we can make it work. If I could have had the kids back in or made a recommendation to have them all back in much sooner, that's exactly what I would have wanted to do. We all share that goal. So we're getting there. And we will get there. Thank you.
Mr. Roberts, if I can say something.
Go ahead, Bob.
I in no way am putting this all on you. In fact, I've told you, I have a lot of empathy for the situation you've been thrown into. I feel bad. That's a total stress. And that empathy extends to all of our administration that's been put into a ridiculous situation. The problem is that I see everybody talking about the spreading and about it could kill you. And I don't hear anybody talking about the damage it's doing, seriously, lifelong damage to our students. The deteriorating of their want to come to school, of an education, their grades plummeting, I hate to say it, but suicides over lack of social. I mean, these are serious things, and in my opinion, they're much worse than worrying about a little bit of a spread that we don't even have the death rate anymore, the hospitalizations anymore. This is a spread. I knew the new strands are coming out and they are supposed to be more contagious, but they've already been proven that they're not more dangerous. So it's, again, it gets down to spreading it opposed to lifelong damage. The lifelong damage that we're seeing are with the students not being in school. And that's the problem I'm having, is that nobody seems to be addressing that. They seem to be brushing that under the rug and always going back to, well, what if it spreads? And again, I just want to say I have a lot of empathy for you and our administration in what they've been thrown into. This is not hard decisions. This is, heck, half the time you have the government coming in saying, this is what you have to do. So I just wanted to put that forth.
Okay, any other comments, questions from the board?
I just have one more, is maybe I should do this and have them by the board, I don't know, but as we move forward into making decisions for the fall and plans for the fall, I guess I'd hope that the administration will share with us, you know, how we are currently doing our virtual program, which some people really like and will probably choose again. I just would like data on how we're going to work our model, because right now I know several people in other districts that are very dissatisfied with the virtual programs being provided in those other districts. So I know ours has been bantered about as a good model, but it does limit our face-to-face staff. So I guess as we move forward, I'm sure that's being taken into consideration, and that'll be shared with us and we can have discussions about it. Thanks.
Okay, so I'll conclude administration reports. J, curriculum updates, Mr. Roberts.
Sure, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Broski. He has some information related to assessing our students' growth over this school year. And so he has a brief presentation on what's required of us this school year in the state of Michigan. So Dr. Broski, you are on.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Good evening. This evening, I'm going to provide you with an update on part of our extended COVID-19 learning plan. One requirement of the plan is for each district to set mid-year and end-of-year benchmark assessment goals for students in K-8 in reading and math for this school year, and provide a report on the progress of the goals. On February 1st, we posted our report on the district website on the transparency page. A final report will be posted in June. Goals for our extended learning plan were developed in September of 2020. NWEA MAP growth scores were analyzed to determine progress in our K-8 students in reading and math. The data allow us to assess the impact that last spring's COVID-19 school closure had on student achievement and growth. This year, students in Chippewa Valley have experienced various learning models, notably remote learning and hybrid. Also, many students have experienced multiple combinations of learning models in the past 5 months of school. For this school year, the goal is for all students to show growth as measured by MAP assessments in reading and math. The growth includes all student subgroups of 30 or more district-wide. NWEA provides a student achievement indicator called a RIT score in reading and math for students at each grade level. RIT scores are normed with students on a national scale. So for example, the RIT scores of 6th graders taking the MAP math assessment are compared with all of the 6th graders across the country who took the assessment. RIT scores can be compared over time to provide a way to monitor student achievement. The district used fall 2020 and winter 2021 NWEA MAP growth data to determine if students district-wide are on track or progressing toward our goals. To be on track, students and subgroups must have increased their average RIT score from fall to winter. The MAP winter data we collected show that Chippewa Valley students in all qualifying subgroups were able to improve their average RIT scores in both reading and math when compared to scores from fall 2020. So currently, our students are on track to meet end of the year district goals. The overall growth average in RIT scores in reading for K through 8 students increased by 2.7, with a 4.8 increase in RIT scores for math. Last week, NWEA MAP student progress reports were provided to parents, along with a letter of explanation from our assessment and data analysis coordinator, John Cafagna. Our teachers, our schools, and our district use MAP results to monitor student growth over time, guide classroom instruction, determine appropriate interventions and supports, adjust curriculum and teaching practices. And parents can use MAP results to monitor their child's growth over time, help children set and work toward goals, identify a child's relative strengths and opportunities for improvement, and utilize web-based learning activities such as Khan Academy. A new NWEA MAP assessment session begins in March, and those results will provide important information for our future instruction, especially in reading and math. They'll also provide data for our end-of-year report. The Educational Services Department realizes there's still much to do in order for our students to continue to show growth. These preliminary NWEA results are promising. They show that our students have shown growth over time. And I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the hard work of our teachers to keep their students involved during this difficult time. Your dedication to your students shows every day. And I want to offer a big thank you to all of our students who've shown so much resiliency over the past year. You're the reason for the positive achievement we've seen in this district. Thank you. can entertain any questions.
Yeah, this is Jill. I have a question. So why are we comparing just fall to winter and not winter of 2020 to winter? I mean, we're not really seeing what they lost. I guess that's my first question.
Well, there was a decision made by the 21 districts throughout the MISD that we would look at fall to winter to look at incremental growth, because the difference between winter and fall or winter to winter, there was no assessment given in the spring of last year. And it's obvious that there's a gap in learning that took place because new learning was not incorporated from March until June.
Okay.
So one of the reasons that we did that, and NWA has a white paper out, they have research that states that it would be a little bit more difficult to determine what exactly the change would be, because we're looking at different scenarios and different environments. So we started school in September, and we've taken the test in, we'll take it both in the winter and in the spring to give us that year.
Okay. So my other question is, I have heard that this data isn't very reliable because a lot of parents did the testing. I mean, because the packet that you sent to the board said that all groups were on track.
Correct.
Which I mean, that's amazing because that doesn't seem to be happening anywhere else in the world. That all groups are on track of growth with the amount of different types of learning that these kids have had. So what is this? I mean, do we take that into account at all? Are we able to use this data for any kind of interventions at this time? Or is it really not that reliable of data?
Well, I think I'm going to turn it over to John in just a minute, but I would like to say that, first of all, with students now being in class, this is not the only way that we take a look at student growth or achievement. Mm-hmm. This is a small thumbnail of what we do. And we were required to comply with the state law that stated we needed to have a mid-year goal. Okay. So we had to look at something that was across the board, an assessment that was given. There was no M-step given, there was nothing like that. And we use NWEA as a benchmark. Traditionally, we've used it for that, but we have other forms of formative and other types of assessment that are used within the classrooms so that the teachers have a pretty clear idea of where their students are. Okay. We have a program called FastBridge, which takes a look at a little bit more granular look at students' skills and gives them the opportunity to provide teachers an opportunity to analyze the data and provide progress monitoring the proper way. John, do you have anything to add?
Good evening, board. I guess the bottom line to the reports that we're seeing is that students are learning during the pandemic, which is the positive sign here. We were very worried. We've never been through a pandemic before, at least most of us haven't been through a pandemic before, so we weren't sure exactly what that was going to look like. So to see that there is still learning happening was a very, very positive sign to our report. Whether or not that learning is as high as we might want, that's remains to be seen as we kind of study the data deeper. But at this point, that's the positive sign.
Okay. And then this doesn't address any of our CLP students, does it? I'm assuming there was no data on there for that.
These are the K-8 students who took the assessment in the fall. And I'm not sure if any CLP students did.
Does anybody?
No, they didn't.
Okay. So we have no data on how they are doing at this time.
We do not have NWEA data. I think there's other data that their teachers collect.
Is there anything to report to the board?
Not at this time. I don't have anything for at this point.
Okay. I have a question about the NWEA test itself, and I don't know if Mr. Cafagna or Dr. Broski would be better able to handle this, but how is the NWEA normed? Is that normed nationally, or is that more local? Because I know you mentioned the 21 MISD districts.
The test itself is normed nationally. So when a kid gets a RITS score, which is their individual score, you can compare that to how other students like them have scored around the nation. And that's where we get the normed score that parents would see in the bar graph next to the student score on that student progress report.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else for the curriculum report? Some questions by the board? Anything further, Ron?
Oh, that was it this evening, Mr. Bednar.
I think Mr. Wojtovich has got a question. Go ahead, Bob.
It's not about the NWAA, but can somebody address, do we have a lesson plan or a program or whatever for our quarantine students?
We do. I'm just not sure who's going to answer that. Who wants to talk about, I don't know if maybe Marina or Paul wants to talk about our quarantining students and their education.
Sure. Right now, when we have students who are quarantined, our teachers work directly with those families as they would with students who have been absent in the past. So with our current hybrid schedule, a 10-day quarantine would result in a student missing anywhere between 2 to 4 at the max days of in-person instruction. So teachers would provide work and whatever content they can provide to keep students up to pace, or at the right pace, I should say, with their work. So it's a bit challenging, but at the same time, our teachers have done this throughout their careers, and they are working hard to provide the information that they need to kids. And then obviously when kids return and they have that in-person opportunity with teachers, that's when a lot of the catching up does occur.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We'll move on to K, oven by board. Board members?
I just have a question about something that was brought up to me. Is drinking water available to the students?
I'm going to have to, I don't know. Is Paul?
Yep, I know that each school is a little bit different, but each school has been advised to have bottles of water on hand, especially for any kind of an emergency situation. Students at the secondary level are all encouraged to bring water bottles with them to school, much like our elementary students have always done. So there are, well, not ideal, but sinks can still be used to refill water bottles. It's the same water, obviously, as our drinking fountains. And so, but our offices typically do have bottled water. So I've been working with the principals to kind of monitor how much they have. And again, it goes back to, we are encouraging kids to bring their own, because providing bottled water to all kids every day would be hard to sustain.
Yeah, they just have a lot to carry.
Sure.
I mean, their backpacks. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The same is true for elementary, as Paul stated.
And Mr. Sibley, I think someone made an allegation that we were price gouging students and charging them $2 for a bottle of water. Is that true?
I have not heard that. So if that's true, I would like to know that, definitely. Unless it's from a machine. It could be out of one of the machines that we don't control the pricing on. So if it's out of a Pepsi, for example, we have a contract with, if they're loading machines, they would control that price, but our offices should not be selling water for $2.
Got it. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Sutherland, isn't there also in tonight's building and site meeting, we talk about the water fill stations that are coming upon the board next meeting that will be starting forthwith installing in the schools on second shift, I think. You want to speak to that just for a second?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Bednar. We received confirmation that the bid that was awarded, and I want to say back in October, we now are going to receive that equipment, and they're going to start the installs, it sounds like, next week. So I believe there's 54 of the stations that we're installing district-wide, and obviously we can't do all buildings at once, but we will get things started next week, and hopefully in a matter of a few weeks or a month, we'll have things going. The break periods, I think we're going to focus on when kids aren't in school. Hopefully we can get more in during the February break, and then whatever we can't get done, then maybe we'll get done over spring break. So that's our hope.
And if I may add, Mr. Bednard, I should have pointed out that our 2 10-12 high school buildings do have filling stations. Those are things that have gone in the past based on either funds raised by the schools. Some of our other schools also have filling stations if they have raised their own funds. So some of the schools do have those available to the students as well.
Great, thank you. Other members of and by the board?
Yeah, I have a couple comments, Frank. One is I wanted to talk a little bit about Pat Pearson. I met Pat, I don't know, 30 years ago maybe. We were both PTO presidents at the same time, and Pat has always been a very active parent, a great volunteering community member in our district. It's really very sad to lose somebody like that has always been so supportive and given so much to a district, not only as an employee, but as a community member. So I worked real closely with her on several things in the community, and it's very sad to hear about her passing, and I certainly give my condolences to the family. Also, I would like to suggest that perhaps the board, if they could let me know if they'd like to make a donation. The family has asked for donations to the Ovarian Cancer Association or Society. I have to look up the link. So I just wanted to know if everybody wants to participate, and I will handle it. And I thought there was something else, but I can't remember what it is. Okay, thank you.
Any other board members for comments? Just had one thing here, actually two. One is with having a few new board members now assigned to subcommittee. They had asked for information regarding the committees they were assigned to or chairing. And I noticed in looking with Ms. Adlam that we had a new committee we formed a few years back, technology, that the terms have not been made for that meeting, along with operations. Not to double check that one, but I believe operations and technology subcommittees do not have terms in our board policy. So I was going to call for an operations committee to meet and review and place those terms in our policy. Mr. Roberts, if you, Ms. Adlam, can arrange that perhaps for the next meeting for an operations subcommittee meeting to address those, adding those terms for both technology and operations into our policy.
Okay, we'll take care of that.
Okay, and just a few closing remarks. I want to thank Jill. I want to thank Bob for their comments tonight. I know it's tough to sit on the board minority, so to speak, so far, and they're returning face-to-face full-time, and it's tough to speak up when you're in that minority. So I definitely appreciate your comments and sharing your thoughts with the board and the staff. Personally, myself, it's been a wild ride since things started, and we've always tried to make our decisions based on what we felt was safest, what the recommendation came from the administration. I trust their administration is looking into these matters. I am fully pleased with the direction the school district has gone, despite the issues we have. I support our administration 100% as they move forward. I would not be comfortable at all now or next week bringing students full face-to-face. It was mentioned to an email, 3,000 kids walking to the Dakota campus in that hallway during school. just can't see it being safe at this point. I know we all have our own opinions. That's why I rely mostly on Mr. Roberts and his team, our professionals, to give recommendations of what is safe. But I want to again thank Jill and Bob for the comments. I know it's a tough position to be in the minority and to speak up against them. So I want to thank you guys for that. That's all I got. So, anything else? Okay, with that, I will call for adjournment. Have a motion.
I will move.
I'll support.
Supported by
Jolene.
Okay, supported by Ms. Dr. Andriasco. Sorry. Can we have a roll call vote, Ms. Pyden?
Sure. Mr. Minczak.
Yes.
Dr. Andriashko.
Yes.
Ms. Aquino.
Yes.
Mr. Bednard.
Yes.
Mr. Soba.
Yes.
Mr. Vojtovich.
Yes.
And myself, yes.
Okay, meeting is
all. And the meeting is adjourned at 8:19.
8:19 it is. Thanks, everybody. We'll be speaking with you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.